some attempt to justify this purchase, this is going to be a long video. I'm going to be talking about everything that's good and bad about this particular lightsaber, and I've split the video up into sections so you can skip around as you like. So I've been looking at getting one of these for years now, but being locked up inside and having nothing to spend my disposable income on has made this the perfect time. The seller, Electrum Sabers, is a smallish company based out of Canada that makes mid to high-end lightsabers. They were extremely nice to me throughout the whole process. Over the past 3 years, I've been popping up in their DMs asking them extremely basic questions that I could have Googled, and they were nothing but graceful to me throughout the whole process. After I'd finally committed to buying this thing, I decided I wanted the blade and the switch plate cover changed, and I messaged them and they immediately got it done. When I finally committed to the purchase, I asked even more dumb questions, and they even threw in a free sound font to apologize for the coronavirus delays. And they even threw in a discount. Actual legends. They undeniably have great customer service, but one thing I would say is this feels closer to an Etsy store than a big business. So stuff like repairs, warranty, and your general power as a consumer is quite limited. This isn't something you can just return on a whim and expect a free new one coming in the post. And that's about as far as I can talk about getting into the price of things. I paid $417 for this bit of kit, which includes the base price, several discounts, several options, and shipping. Before I get into the complicated mess of the options and changes and discounts, I want to talk about the base price. By itself, this lightsaber costs $350, with international shipping coming out to $55. Without spoiling the rest of my review, I'd say that the cost of this is justified. Not worth it, but justified. I can't do the maths on this for you if this is financially a good move for you, but I will say that if cost is profit and labor, then this feels like a good split to me. So, the options and discounts. I paid $10 extra for this 24 karat gold switch plate. I paid $30 to get this old weathered look applied, and I paid $15 to get this D-ring installed on the bottom. You see, I have an awful condition where whenever I buy something like this, I have to buy something that looks exactly like the image in my head looks. If I go for half measures, I end up feeling disappointed whenever I look at it. And so these features may seem optional, but these were not optional for me. In order though, the gold switch plate design has no use outside of looking pretty, which might make it seem useless, but look at it, you're wrong. The extra long trans white blade is a great call at $15 and totally useful for someone of my height. The weathering looks absolutely fantastic, and it blew me away when I first saw it. Would absolutely recommend. This is the light weathering option. They also do a heavy weathering option for $60, which features bits of torn and burnt metal, but this feels like a nice middle ground to me. I also admit that the D-ring isn't useful. You can't attach it to your belt without the blade hitting the floor, and I'm not the kind of person who would carry it around without the blade attached, since I actually want to use the thing. As for discounts, I ordered the thing on Star Wars Day, which gave me $30 off. Customer service threw an extra $15 off that order, and when I contacted them later saying I wanted my blade to be upgraded to the $15 more expensive trans white blade, they threw in the upgrade for free. Again, incredible customer service. What this all adds up to is that I effectively didn't have to pay shipping on this thing for all the discounts I got. So, now money's out of the way, we can actually start talking about this. This thing looks incredible. You're going to get bored of hearing me say this, but I cannot overstate my shock that this looks as good in person as it does on video. It has a fantastic heavy feeling. Everything that you'd imagine textured has a texture. When you pick it up in the morning, it's cold to the touch, and after using it for a little while, it warms up like you'd expect a laser sword to. Its heaviness generally makes tricks easier to do and gives it a wonderful hand-built feeling. These are all hand-built, then the edges are sanded down, then the weathering is applied. Because of this, every saber is slightly unique, which I love. Overall, it's just such a joy to look at. I love having it around the house like a piece of art. In the daylight, where you can make out all the details and scratches and bumps, and in the evening, when the blade lights up the whole room and everything looks fantastical. The look and feel of this object is absolutely my favorite thing about it. 10 out of 10. Now, sadly, there's a couple of caveats to this. The incredibly silly one is the D-ring. When the handle is fully screwed on, the D-ring doesn't sit flat with the rest of the lightsaber. Now, I personally like this. It feels kind of hand-built and janky, like Star Wars should, but if this sets you off, then it's worth noting. Now, the other thing of note is the power cable. It comes with this quite short, cheap-looking micro USB cable, and look, I know how much long braided cables cost, and this doesn't quite cut it for a $400 purchase. The only serious complaint I have about the build quality is the blade retention screw. This little screw here holds the blade in, and you use an Allen key to get it out. When I first got this, I tried to take the screw out and the screw itself just fell apart. I assume this happened because it was screwed on so tightly, but it's a big gap in the production quality, and I'd rather just use this little red hand screw at the top to unscrew the blade. This is my only real complaint about the build quality, and when I bought it up with Electrum, they did tell me the exact type of screw they used so I can get spares. It's sad to end the section on such a downer, since overall I think the build quality of this thing is just incredible. Now, on to actually using the thing. Now, for those of you who haven't seen one of these in person, they don't quite look like this with the white hot core and a coloured border. They do on camera, but in person, they look like a very saturated, bright stick of colour. How bright and intense this is depends very much on the light in the area. This lightsaber gets surprisingly bright and intense. I've heard conflicting reports online, and lightsabers do get brighter and more intense and louder than this. But I think for me, and I think for most people, this is more than enough. Like all lightsabers, it struggles hard in daylight, but give it just a little bit of shadow and the blade will show up as vibrant. At night, it's just spectacular, and swinging it around is so much fun. Depending on your settings, the blade has practically infinite colours and will pulse and flicker in gorgeous, subtle ways. Alongside the visual component, there's an audio component with a speaker in the base here. It's pretty basic, but more than detailed enough for lightsaber hums and crackles, and it gets surprisingly loud. The saber has a synthesizer on board and will combine pre-recorded sound effects from various sound fonts and dynamic sound effects based on the movements from the gyroscope. The gyroscope also creates dynamic clash effects when the blade comes into contact with something. It's best to just show rather than tell. You control the various functions of the lightsaber via a touchpad, and here's how it works. Instead of having a couple of buttons to press like most sabers, this saber actually has a touchpad with 3 areas that act like buttons. The bottom button turns the lightsaber on, the top button turns the lightsaber off, and the middle button opens a variety of quick settings that do things like change the sound, the color, and other stuff. It's supposed to act as a quick and dirty alternative to the app. Let's talk about the app. Having an app to control the many settings and profiles of a smart saber is a fantastic idea in theory. I say in theory because in practice, I hate using this app. I'm not sure how much I can really criticize it, however. Electrum Sabers is a tiny team, and the same people who make the app also design, test, build, package, and ship the actual sabers themselves, which is a wild amount of work and mightily impressive on its own front. That being said, this app feels awful to use. It's horribly laid out. There are no tooltips on what any of the settings actually mean beyond a vague name. It shows settings that don't have any effect on your specific saber. It crashes often. It has a really odd relationship with the profile system. The blade colors page lies to you about what color the blade is. And overall, it reminds me of a hastily thrown together GitHub exe meant to fill a niche job rather than something the general public is meant to use. Check this shit out.
Oh, isn't it switching it?
The quick settings only know isn't functioning. It's buggy is the short answer. I really like this, but it's buggy. To demonstrate what I mean, I'm going to go through the process of updating one of my profiles to use a different sound font. On the app, I have to turn on my saber for it to come in range. It sometimes saves the custom name I picked out for it, and sometimes returns the default name, and the app will often crash if I tap on the default name. I open the user profiles and select the profile I want to change. Even if it's currently selected, changing any setting of a profile outside of this way comes back as deselecting the profile. I hit back and I make a small random change to the kinetic engine. Then I go and make a random change to the blade settings. Then I change what I actually want to change by going inside sound profiles. I select the sound profile, hit back, go to the user profiles and hit save. If I don't make small changes to the other settings pages, the save won't work for some reason. Also, about a third of the time, this process just doesn't work at all. Again, I can't be too harsh on this, and the app does respond in real time, so making small changes is relatively easy. But every time I want to change something, I having to wade through this minefield of crashes and menus and all that other stuff. I honestly think this app is due for a total redesign. The UI should prioritize profiles and have everything else underneath. The app should have tooltips or graphics to explain what each setting does and what classic add interval means for me. It should also just hide the settings that I can't use on my lightsaber. Once again, this is me imagining a perfect world, and to be honest, having an app at all is really impressive, especially for a small company like this. But I hated using this app. It's easily the worst part of this saber. Despite the nitpicking, I'm so glad I own this saber. I love looking at it, I love swinging it, I love showing it to other people. It's such a joy just to have. Its build quality, impressive feature list, gorgeous light and sound, and sheer design beauty make it maybe the favorite thing I own, and I can heartily recommend Electrum Sabers for both their products and their impressive customer support. Glad to have this video out of my system, and I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, and the correct viewing order is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Liked it, and we'll cut halfway through that. Yeah.
No, I'm not going halfway through that, because I want people to know that I'm not including 9 in that list.
Oh.